Hi, and welcome to episode 67 of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news stories every week. I'm Steve Elliott, the editor at tokesignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. First of all, let's look at a pretty flower. Our Toke Signals bud pick of the week this week is a grape ape indica. Look at that nice nug. It's been flowered 8 weeks somewhere in Washington, and we have a farmer here who knows what they're doing. Let's do the news now, shall we? In Washington state, legal marijuana stores are having trouble matching black market prices. And wait a minute, you may be saying, when legalization was on the ballot in 2012, we were told that was one of the main reasons to legalize the stuff. Well, that particular promise hasn't come true yet anyway, due to the onerous nature of Washington state's regulations on the legal marijuana industry, including an overbearing tax scheme. The legal marijuana stores, which have opened as the badly written I-502 is implemented, are reportedly having trouble turning a profit, even at $30 a gram. Despite bringing in more than $440,000 in sales since July, Station 420 in Union Gap, Washington is still in the red financially, according to the owner, Adam Marcus. "We have yet to make a profit here," Marcus said, and there are a lot of other people who got into this just thinking they were going to be millionaires in a year, and now they're having a hard time. Washington state had $15.6 million in marijuana sales in November, and that's more than double the figures from August. But pot shop owners say prices have come down by as much as half since July as supplies have increased. But then there's the pesky fact that the prices of legal weed are still roughly double to triple those on the black market. Consumers aren't morons, and if the guy you know down the street is selling righteous weed for $10 a gram, a typical price both on the street here in Washington state and in the medical marijuana community, who wants to pay $30 a gram for the privilege of buying the stuff in a legal store? Marie Vandergriff, owner of the marijuana shop Mill Creek A in Union Gap, claims that legal 502 pot is safer and higher quality. But both of those points are highly debatable. As for safer, Washington state allows more than 200 pesticides on legally grown weed. And the reputation of legal marijuana in Washington has taken a severe beating when it comes to quality, because many farmers rush substandard product to market in the initial frenzy when the stores first opened in July. "I don't think we're drawing a lot of the black market customers," Vandergriff said. Now, these pricing problems go well beyond just supply and demand, and they even extend past the 25% excise tax levied at 3 levels of the process: producer, processor, and retailer by the state, as I-502 is written. Retailers expect to have to ante up for a federal tax collection based on an obscure 1982 law that taxes businesses which sell quote-unquote illegal products. And industry analysts believe it is likely to be enforced by federal regulators. Now, the IRS could try to collect from 50 to 75% of sales, according to Hillary Bricken, a Seattle-based lawyer who specializes in representing marijuana businesses for the County Law Group. Bricken said that marijuana store owners don't get the same deductions as other business owners when they're paying their taxes. None of the costs of running the store, such as utility bills, rent, or employee pay, or that onerous 25% state excise tax, are expected to be deductible, according to Bricken. A year from now, we're going to see a great drop in the number of cannabis businesses out there because of this, Bricken predicts. When that happens, of course, prices could skyrocket even higher in many areas due to a lack of competition. Now, since marijuana is an illegal Schedule I drug under federal law, it would have to be removed from that list on the Controlled Substances Act in order to relieve business owners of the threat of an impossibly high federal tax. It's going to take an act of Congress, and to my knowledge, there is no legislation out there that has any chance of passing, Bricken said. She said she doesn't believe the legal marijuana stores will ever be able to compete with black market prices. Is it any wonder that the Washington legislature and the legal marijuana industry in Washington have their sights set on extinguishing medical marijuana dispensaries in the state? The dispensaries, which have operated in Washington for at least 5 years, typically have higher quality products and lower prices in an actual free market environment, Clearly an intolerable situation for the profiteers and the politicians with hungry tax coffers to fill. In Florida this week, an appeals court found that mandatory drug testing for welfare recipients is unconstitutional. This is a long-fought battle. A three-judge panel at the 11th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals on Wednesday ruled that a 2011 Florida law mandating that all applicants for the state's needy assistance or temporary assistance for needy families, TANF program, submit to suspicionless drug tests violates the Constitution's protection against unreasonable government searches. The law was championed by Republican Florida Governor Rick Scott in his 2010 campaign for governor and before the legislature in 2011. But it was challenged in September 2011 by the American Civil Liberties Union of Florida and the Florida Justice Institute on behalf of Luis Lebron, a single father, Navy veteran, and then college student. The ACLU's Criminal Law Reform Project later joined the lawsuit. The 11th Circuit panel's order rejects arguments made by attorneys for the state of Florida that the government has the authority to require people to submit to invasive searches of their bodily fluids without suspicion of wrongdoing, stating the warrantless, suspicionless urinalysis drug testing of every Florida TANF applicant as a mandatory requirement for receiving temporary cash assistance offends the Fourth Amendment. We are very pleased by the court's opinion, which once again makes clear that the U.S. Constitution forbids the state of Florida from subjecting ordinary private citizens to invasive and unwarranted searches, said ACLU of Florida Associate Legal Director Maria Kayanan. This is a resounding affirmation of the values of the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, that none of us can be forced to submit to invasive and humiliating searches at the whim of the government, and that the Constitution protects the poor and the wealthy alike. The court has once again confirmed what we argued all along, that the state of Florida cannot treat an entire class of people like suspected criminals simply because they've asked the state for temporary assistance. Wednesday's ruling is the fourth time the state's arguments in support of the 2011 law have been rejected by a federal court since it was challenged by the ACLU of Florida shortly after going into effect. In October 2011, U.S. District Judge Mary Scriven enjoined enforcement of the law by entering a preliminary injunction. Governor Scott appealed that injunction, which was upheld by the 11th Circuit in February 2013. Judge Scriven issued a final judgment in December 2013, and the state appealed that ruling to the 11th Circuit as well. Florida's suspicionless drug testing program for those seeking assistance clearly violated the Constitution, said Jason Williamson, staff attorney with the ACLU's Criminal Law Reform Project. With today's decision, this prejudiced and intrusive treatment of the poor will come to an end. Now, since Florida passed that law, many other states have enacted various laws and policies mandating drug testing for applicants for certain state benefits. And they've looked to the Florida case to determine whether to go forward with broad, suspicionless drug testing like the law struck down by the 11th Court. The court rejected the rationale that those who apply for government assistance must have drug testing. And it drew a clear line that will keep us from going down that slippery slope, according to Randall Berg, Executive Director of the Florida Justice Institute and co-counsel of the ACLU. Good news this week from a new study which provides yet more evidence that marijuana fights Alzheimer's disease. Yet another study adding to the growing body of evidence for using cannabis to treat and prevent Alzheimer's disease. The study found that unlike conventional anti-inflammatory pharmaceuticals, THC has no toxicity. New research published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease in September strongly suggests that THC could be a potential therapeutic treatment option for Alzheimer's disease through multiple functions and pathways. Alzheimer's is the sixth leading cause of death in the United States, with more than 5 million Americans diagnosed. 1 in 3 seniors will die with Alzheimer's or other dementia, and it cost the nation about $203 billion in 2013. Now, researchers at the University of South Florida and Thomas Jefferson University wanted to look into the potential therapeutic qualities of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, with respect to slowing or halting the hallmark characteristics of Alzheimer's disease. They treated Alzheimer's research cells with THC and examined them at the 6-hour, 24-hour, and 48-hour points. They found THC to be effective at lowering AB levels in a dose-dependent manner. Amyloid B, AB, is a type of protein linked to Alzheimer's symptoms. THC directly interacts with amyloid B, thereby inhibiting aggregation. It was also effective in lowering other key markers of Alzheimer's. Also extremely encouraging was the fact that no toxicity was observed from the THC, the researchers noted. They even found that THC enhances the function of the mitochondria, which are the cell's energy factories. THC is known to be a potent antioxidant with neuroprotective properties, but this is the first report that the compound directly affects Alzheimer's methodology by decreasing amyloid beta levels, inhibiting its aggregation, and enhancing mitochondrial function, according to the study's lead author, Chuan-Hai Cao, PhD, a neuroscientist at the Bird Alzheimer's Institute and the USF College of Pharmacy. Now, decreased levels of amyloid beta means less aggregation, which may protect against the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Since THC is a natural and relatively safe amyloid inhibitor, THC or its analogs may help us develop an effective treatment in the future. Other research published in that same issue of the journal indicates THC boosts the body's natural ability to fight Alzheimer's through the endocannabinoid system. Alzheimer's is thought to result from a lifetime of brain inflammation, and marijuana is one of the safest anti-inflammatories known to medicine. Some neuroscientists believe that smoking marijuana in early adulthood may prevent the onset of Alzheimer's later in life. Falling rates of the disease among baby boomers tends to buttress that theory. Time magazine in 2012 reported that cannabis slows the aging of the brain. Smoking, eating, or vaporizing cannabis containing THC and CBD, cannabidiol, directly affects nerve cell function, reducing chronic brain inflammation, oxidative stress, and cellular dysfunction, while promoting stability of the human body's internal environment, homeostasis, and healthy brain cells, neurotrophic support, scientific studies show. What we found was that not only did a single puff a day reverse the memory impairment, but also restarted neurogenesis, said Gary Wink, a researcher from Ohio State University. Other studies have shown THC reduces other key pathological markers of Alzheimer's. Meanwhile, the federal government has patented the cannabinoids as neuroprotectants. They have a patent on them as medical neuroprotectants, even while they are keeping marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance, by definition meaning that it has no medical use and a high potential for abuse. No, I haven't figured that one out either. In Texas this week, the Houston police chief says marijuana prohibition has failed. Chief Charles McClellan says the Fed should take the lead. In an interview with Cultural Baggage, a radio show hosted by Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP, speaker and former Air Force security policeman Dean Becker, Houston Police Chief Charles McClellan said marijuana prohibition is a failed public policy. During the interview, Chief McClellan highlighted pilot programs within his department and others in the state to reduce marijuana possession penalties for first-time offenders. He also discussed the necessary role of the federal government in changing national drug laws. Because many state legal marijuana businesses cannot safely use banks, and because illegal markets still exist in most states, those markets can still flourish by undercutting the dispensaries, according to the chief. McClellan also acknowledged the racism inherent in drug enforcement, which results in the incarceration of a disproportionate number of young black men. It's not uncommon to hear these sorts of comments from police on the street, said Major Neil Franklin, retired, executive director of LEAP. What is less common is to see a top administrator choose to speak out about what's right, despite major financial incentives in the form of federal grants and asset forfeiture proceeds to protect the status quo. I salute Chief McClellan for standing up for social justice, Franklin said. He exemplifies the best of American policing. In Minnesota this week, companies could supply medical marijuana as soon as next July. 2 companies that will supply qualifying Minnesotans with medical marijuana as soon as July 2015, but some patients will be forced to drive hours if they want to participate in that program. The Minnesota Health Department on Monday announced that Leafline Labs in Cottage Grove and Minnesota Medical Solutions in Otsego have been licensed to grow marijuana and process it into liquid, pills, and vapor. The reason that all this processing is necessary is that Minnesota's poorly written medical marijuana law doesn't allow the use of herbal cannabis flowers in any form, and specifically forbids smoking them, a method of quick relief for many patients. More ironically, the law allows the use of processed concentrates, but not the plant itself. A dozen organizations have submitted applications to grow and process medical marijuana in Minnesota. Leafline, owned by the Bachman family of floral fame, plans to open a distribution center in Eagan, Minnesota next year, with satellite sites in Hibbing, St. Cloud, and St. Paul opening by July 1st, 2016. Groundbreaking on that firm's Cottage Grove growing and processing facilities expected before the end of this year. Meanwhile, Minnesota Medical Solutions already has facilities built in Otsego, and it expects to begin growing cannabis this week. Patients should be able to buy its products by next July in Rochester, Maple Grove, Minneapolis, and Moorhead, Minnesota. Distribution sites must receive local government approval, so they're tentative so far. State officials may also decide to change the sites if needed to better serve patients. More sites may be needed, according to Leafline co-founder Dr. Gary Starr. Starr's Leafline partner, Dr. Andrew Bachman, called Monday an historic day in Minnesota. He said that 10 family members known for Bachman floral operations are involved in Leafline to help relieve some conditions Minnesotans live with and die with. In southwest Minnesota's Luverne, the nearest medical marijuana distribution center is in St. Cloud, 199 miles away. Legislators could amend the law to allow for more centers. Our goal is to provide medical cannabis products to patients with qualifying conditions, said Minnesota Health Commissioner Dr. Ed Ehlinger. Our attention over the next few months will be on working with these two manufacturers to implement the program and safely grow, process, and distribute the products. State officials aren't asking how the two companies get seeds or clones for their marijuana plants. That's because it's illegal under federal law to transport either of those things across state lines, and Minnesota state law makes it illegal to grow cannabis anywhere except in the two facilities. In Virginia this week, a state senator introduced a marijuana decriminalization bill. A bill that would decriminalize possession of up to an ounce of marijuana has been introduced by Virginia State Senator Adam P. Ebbin, a Democrat from Alexandria, with the upcoming General Assembly session. Ebbin said there have been unsuccessful decrim bills in the Virginia House of Delegates in the past, but that this is the first bill he's aware of which has originated in the Virginia Senate. It would decriminalize simple possession of an ounce or less, but not decriminalize it to the extent recently done in Colorado and Washington State, Ebbin said. I had requests to do it for a number of years, and I decided this year to go ahead, he said. There's about 25 million Americans who smoke marijuana in the past year, and our public policy should start to reflect reality and not deny it. This is not just a conversation starter. We need to pass this bill, said Edward McCann, Policy Director for Virginia NORML, which advocates for legalization. McCann said he thinks chances are better than even that the bill will make it out of the Senate's Courts of Justice Committee. We've been talking to many of the members, McCann said. I think there is general support for the core of the bill, which is removing criminal penalties for people who possess small amounts, even from Republicans. Ebbin's bill is sponsored in the Virginia House by State Delegate Kay Corey, a Democrat from Fairfax, Virginia. It would remove criminal penalties for simple possession of less than an ounce of marijuana, now punishable with a $500 fine and 30 days in jail. A maximum civil fine of $100 will be payable to the State Literary Fund. The bill would also reduce penalties for distribution and possession with intent to distribute by creating a presumption that a person who grows no more than 6 marijuana plants would be growing them for personal use. Additionally, it would relax some laws concerning cannabis paraphernalia and limit property forfeiture to the sale or distribution of 1 pound or more of marijuana. Currently, there is no minimum amount for forfeiture to kick in. Virginia had 24,776 marijuana arrests in 2013, according to the state police. Most of those were under 30. A disproportionate number were African American. Finally, in Uruguay this week, the presidential election there safeguarded marijuana legalization. It was one of the big issues. Frente Amplio Broad Front candidate Tabaré Vázquez defeated opposition candidate Luis Alberto Lacalle Pou in a Sunday presidential runoff election in Uruguay by 53.6 to 41.1%. That vote had major implications for the future of Uruguay's historic marijuana legalization. While Vázquez had promised to continue implementing marijuana regulation, National Party opposition candidate Lacalle Pou said that if he were to become president, he would repeal major parts of that law, including government-regulated sales to adults, which is the most distinguishing feature of the Uruguayan initiative. Sunday's presidential election result safeguards Uruguay's historic marijuana legalization, said Hannah Hetzer, policy manager for the Americas at the Drug Policy Alliance. The Uruguayan people determinedly chose the presidential candidate who will continue the country's progressive policies, including the rollout of the world's first national legally regulated marijuana market. In recent years, debate and political will for drug policy reform has gained unprecedented global momentum. We are witnessing a clear departure from the hardline prohibitionist global framework in the United States that has been pushing for so long, Hetzer said. It marks a new period of relative openness to debate and alternative ideas. Hope you have a great week. Until we meet again, happy holidays and stay lifted. See you then.